All right, we are here with Mike Mitchell of Sports Illustrated. I want to point out Sports Illustrated. Mike, welcome back to the program. Congratulations, of course, on you and Anthony moving up to Sports Illustrated. I mean, how's that been treating you?
Oh, it's been a lot of hard work. It's a little bit difficult. Like your site, News Hub, has established itself, right, over the last few years. So you have a
Hmm.
good followership, such a great team. We've seen guys who've worked for you um, do such a great job and elevate themselves, like Jay Noakes working for the XFL, now UFL.
Hmm.
And so, starting from the ground up is a little difficult. Anthony Miller's a machine. He works very hard. He's writing a lot of articles. I've been writing a lot of articles. As you know, with the site, like we covered last year was so hard, covering the USFL, the XFL at the same time when the seasons were going on, as well as the CFL. So you try to put out as much quality as you can, and I tried to not to do the quantity aspect so much, but there's so much going on that it's really difficult to keep track. And then if you have personal life and other matters, I know you're dealing with some stuff, Mark.
Yep.
You know me personally, the stuff
Mm.
I've been dealing with too on my end. So I'm sorry to hear that you're going through what you're going through. So hopefully
Yeah.
everything gets better with your wife there. That's a hard road.
Yep.
I usually don't get into personal matters, but I've had a very close family member that I'm taking care of. I'm essentially a caregiver for that individual, um, and they've gone through pneumonia and UTIs and infections and all that, and it's a hard road to recovery. A lot of setbacks along the way. So I'm hoping that your wife has a smooth recovery and is able to get back to normal, whatever normal is in this life.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's interesting that here it is. We're finally like right here at the cusp. Is this going to be the final? Like we're gonna have to restart and call it something else next year. Like, and then now we have, both of us have all this like family stuff, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But we're here.
Yeah, and then last year, yeah, it was frustrating because last year I had like media credentials and opportunities to go to the CFL, to go to the Grey Cup, to go to Toronto Argonauts games, to go to the XFL games and all that, and spring league games, and unfortunately because of family stuff, I was unable to. So it made it very hard. And I appreciate the leagues for reaching out and giving me that carte blanche, but yeah, it makes it tough. Football is fun.
Yeah.
There are aspects of it that are rough too. There's some seediness there too, but this is the playground aspect of life. Sometimes real life and that other stuff is so hard. So
Yeah.
it's part of life. You got to grin and bear it. It's hard to see the people you love go through any hardships.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
and it's just part of life. It's just the way it goes. But the football stuff, it's fun to get into that and still be able to focus on that. And we're entering a very fun period. Should be interesting, unique waters.
Yeah.
I wrote an article at SI. I think it was maybe my first article I wrote for them about how I think this is it, Mark. I think this is the last ditch effort. I
I
think
agree.
this is, if this doesn't work, sure, there'll be the major league footballs of the world that talk about doing it and some that try to do something, but this is your best shot as far as I'm concerned. Outside of the NFL actually starting up their own spring pro football league, which I'm old enough to remember when the NFL actually did that. They had
Hmm.
their own pro football league that was during the NFL offseason, started out in the States and in Canada, moved it over to Europe. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Different time. Maybe the NFL gets back into this space somewhere down the road. Maybe the NFL works with the UFL. Who knows?
Hmm.
But if this doesn't work with Fox and ESPN, Disney, ABC, all these people that are involved behind the scenes, the Kevin LaForces, the Jerry Cardinals, the Eric Shanks, obviously Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, everybody else is involved. If this doesn't work out, I don't think it's going to work for anyone else.
I agree.
You still get skepticism. I think what they did was they bought themselves a little more time,
Hmm.
and they're hoping like, I think we're probably going to get 2 seasons of this, and then if they don't get to where they want to get to, which I know the end game goal with the Fox side has always been to get team owners involved.
Hmm.
If they can get into that, I know Redbird has been trying to rope in investors. Fox has been trying to rope in investors. I think outside of the NFL getting involved and funding and all that, um, I think it's going to take like team ownership. If we get to 2 years from now and this is still kind of a niche product that
Hmm.
hasn't quite stood up and made a dent and become like the fifth most popular pro sports league out there.
Hmm.
I think it's possible they close up shop, and this is the best shot we got. So hopefully this works out here. And it's pretty amazing to think that we've reached this point where the USFL and XFL are together. And I love that aspect of it. I like the rivalry. I like the fact that they kept those two brand names alive, at least with the conferences. There's going to be plenty of trash talking and
Hmm.
comparisons during the year. I think that's cool. It's less than ideal in terms of I wish there was more teams, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who lost jobs and are not no longer part of the league, but you got to take what you can get, and hopefully, what they present is top notch. Because I think the quality on the field is going to be very good. Just a question of how the league presents it and whether or not they can attract the mainstream audience to watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that going into this season, would you say that there is less juice than there was? I mean, in 2020, it was like people couldn't wait for like raring to go. The XFL, was they were excited and there was some, but now I'm not really feeling, I think because we've been
Nor am
here.
I, unless you're in this. If you're in this bubble, you're excited about it. I
Oh
can't wait
yeah.
till the games, but I feel you, Mark, on that. Um, I didn't feel the hype and the energy towards the XFL last season that obviously 2020 had. Different animal altogether. I know I'm talking about animal when I bring when that's fitting. Maybe when you bring up Vince McMahon, I know, but his promotional ability was definitely on display with the XFL. They took 2 years to promote that, set up a rampway, and I think they did. He hired the right people. And I think they did the right thing, like in terms of who he hired and the marketing, the community connections that they made, and everything they did with that league. They created a buzz and a fun hype for the league.
Mm,
And we're not quite feeling it. Now, maybe as we get closer, they'll do a little more with that. I do know, I reported this at Sports Illustrated, and we're seeing glimpses of it now. But it's also like today, for example, we're starting to see uniforms. UFL teams are having media day, and I mean, it's less than ideal to do it that way than rather than present the uniforms to your fan base, get a little hype for it, do a nice press release, and then do the media day with all the players. And then unfortunately
mhm,
there's some hiccups along the way with like players wearing the wrong numbers being given to players. I mean, these media day photo shoots are something that you see throughout the season. So you're going to see Scooby Wright on Fox posing while he's got the wrong number on,
mm,
um, that kind of thing. So that's less than ideal to roll it out that way. There's also an announcement coming. Both I've gotten sources inside ABC and Fox who both told me that they're going to announce their broadcast teams for this coming season. There'll be some of the familiar faces that we love and respect, like the Tom Lugan Bills and those guys. But there's going to be some new people who are a part of this, some fresh faces. I wrote an article recently at SI where I talked about how 4 years ago, Greg Olson was on the fence about retiring, and he worked XFL games with Kevin Burkhardt. He wasn't even sure if he was going to come back to play in the 2020 NFL season. He was so great, got rave reviews doing the XFL games with Kevin Burkhardt, XFL games on Fox. Um, that he ended up not returning to playing football. And now there are many people that consider Olsen to be the best analyst, best game analyst out
mm,
there. And him and Burkhardt are a tremendous team. So we could see, you had 4 years ago Diana Rossini working the sidelines. She's a respected NFL reporter. So you could see, we'll see the familiar names. Joel Klatt is tremendous. Kurt Menefee's tremendous. He's been doing this since the NFL Europe days. And Tom Luganbill's tremendous. He has ties to the XFL. Nobody knows more about
yeah.
spring pro football than he does. His dad won the first XFL championship, and Luganbill's covered all these leagues and everything. So he's really good. And then so we'll get some of those guys, Kurt Menefee's, all that. But I'm interested in some of the new up and coming because, yeah, we talk about these leagues advancing the careers of players and coaches and personnel people and league employees, but they
Hmm.
also advance the careers of the broadcasters. So that's going to be interesting to monitor once they release their broadcast teams. There aren't too many major announcements left for the league. They did their TV schedules. They're doing their uniforms however they do them now. There's some tweaks, I guess, with the USFL stuff. I didn't expect any grand major redesign. But we're getting closer, so they're going to have to build up momentum. It's a
Hmm.
struggle. It's a challenge for these entities to rope in the casual fan. They've got a niche audience already. Can they get people who have ignored the USFL and the XFL the last 2 years to resample it as it's under the new UFL umbrella?
Yeah, it's been, start, stop, start, stop. I mean, there's definitely people that have, kind of fallen on the wayside, and the media game is so much different now than it was in 2020. And speaking of that, you haven't heard any, like they did shows, both leagues did shows, like that's not happening. And I assume there's not going to be a pregame show. I mean, they did something on ESPN that was streamed. Have you heard anything about that stuff?
I haven't, and I like the United by Football show that the USFL
Yeah.
did, and I like the Player 54 stuff that the XFL did last season. It would be nice if they did that. You have all these different mediums with Fox and Disney, that you have all these different avenues where you can do shows that are dedicated to the league. You'll see the usual stuff that they do, but the two networks do not dedicate a lot of their time to these leagues. Every once in a while they'll show highlights or what have you, but it's not
Hmm.
treated as if it's one of the major sports leagues. It's kind of
Yeah.
like an afterthought. And oh, by the way, look at this play by Jacor Pearson last night in St. Louis, who, by the way, is hurt. It's not season ending. Still working on information on that. Um, but I'm sure the team will update and everything. But it's, yeah, you wish there was a show talking about Jacor Pearson's training camp injury and
Yeah.
saying, hey,
Just
will,
behind the
will
scenes
St.
stuff.
Louis yeah, will St. Louis go there and try to lure another receiver in to join the Hakeem Butlers and the Marcel Aitmans of the world, Darius Shepard, etc. And talk about how this will affect them. Will they hurt them early on? That kind of thing.
Mm.
So, yeah, I haven't heard anything, Mark. Perhaps they will do. I'm have a feeling they're shooting footage. So, just a question of how they decide to utilize it and in what manner.
Mm.
The league is definitely bare bones. I
I was
mean,
gonna say
it's
bare bones.
they're definitely saving money on a lot of different things. A lot of the concepts they're taking their cost cutting, or I guess financially responsible models, and merge them together. Um, they're implementing that. So if they see things that are maybe not, if they think things are needless or not, smart from a cost perspective, they may not do it. I contend that you need to do as much as possible to get your league out there, get word out, promote, promote, promote.
Yeah.
And so they need to do that, but we'll see. By accident, what could happen is one of these shows, by accident, someone who doesn't follow the league might come across a show, but this looks pretty cool. I really like this Jacor Pearson guy. I want to watch him play.
Yeah.
You might buy. You got any way you can rope in people to try out your league, to give your league a chance, to get an understanding of what your league is about, is a good thing. Accessibility is important, but you also can't have these shows and then not promote them.
Yeah.
ESPN did a good job last year. The crew doing like a pregame show kind of online and all that, and that was cool. And I mean, I got a shout out at one of their shows,
I
which is
do remember that.
crazy. Yeah, so Jason Fitzgerald and those guys or whatever. So I
Yeah.
believe. So yeah, seems like years ago now, but it would be nice if the UFL were to do some stuff, and maybe they'll announce something. Maybe they'll surprise us.
Yeah. Speaking, so one of the questions I have, how involved is Danny Garcia and The Rock on the day-to-day thing? I mean, one thing I noticed right away when the balls came out, there was no like Commissioner Danny Garcia anywhere on the ball. How involved are they behind the scenes?
That's a very good question, Mark, and it's something that I haven't really gotten a direct answer on how much are they financially invested, how much are they spending on the league. You notice their names kind of changed to founder, league founders,
Yeah.
right? So, and Danny's not been out front. She'll be out front when the season starts. They'll figure out Dwayne Johnson, get him involved, considering how busy he is now with WrestleMania coming up and
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes. He's doing great work, by the way. Anybody who's been
Yes.
watching figures, he's charismatic as all get out. He's telling crowds to go home and smoke crack. It's vintage. It's vintage rock. So it's really funny. But anyhow, but I guess I'm sure he's a very busy man. He's
Yeah.
making WWE appearances. He's got a WrestleMania match coming up. So whatever tag team match or whatever. So it'll be. I'm sure he'll be front and center when the league kicks off. You want to use that star power to
Yeah.
not that it's a cure all and it's going to all of a sudden make people check out the league. It'd be cool if they. I've seen, obviously it's on Fox SmackDown, so I've seen UFL commercials on during SmackDown, which is one of their highest rated shows, 18 to 49.
Mm,
So we'll see Danny, but it isn't the same as last year. Danny hasn't been as front and center as she was. And the same with Dwayne Johnson. He's been busy. He's always
mm.
busy. But
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know right now, Mark, how much are they behind the scenes saying we need to do this, that, and the other?
Mm,
Um, as far as marketing, promotion, rollouts, layouts, presentation. I think that's left to the big boys like Fox and ESPN. And I'm not saying that they're not a factor in
hmm.
all of this. But doesn't seem like they're in, but I don't see them like as being the shot callers, for lack
Yeah.
of a better term, when it comes to the league, especially on the football side. They're not really that's not their bag.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
left that for Brandon's the president of the league. He's operating that, the football ops and all that. And then obviously Moose is the there's a controversy there too. We'll see what happens there with kickoff and everything else, that
Oh, yeah.
choice they made. But anyhow, we'll see if the NFL votes in the XFL kickoff come
Yeah.
March 24th.
Yeah. I saw that. I was like, I don't
It's
know.
crazy. Like this is information I wrote about, but just to get into that, I could go all over the place sometimes when I'm talking, but um, there was some tough moments between the heads of the USFL and the XFL when it came to deciding which rules they were going to have for this league, for the UFL.
Hmm.
And there was some contentious talks between both sides on whether or not they should keep the kickoff, and obviously Moose won out in that argument.
Yeah.
He pushed for the USFL kickoff, and one of the things he cited, which I think is funny, he cited the success of Brandon Aubrey and Cavante Turpin playing with USFL style special teams, ending up becoming all pros in the NFL. And Cavante Turpin, all pro kick returner. Everybody knows about how great Brandon Aubrey was last year for the Cowboys as kicker.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though. Here's what makes it funny. Brandon Aubrey and Cavante Turpin are both USFL All Stars. They're now NFL All Pros. Their special teams coordinator in Dallas is John Fossil, the person who's pushing for the XFL kickoff
Oh.
in the NFL. And he's proposed it to the NFL. He proposed it at Combine. He's got two others, Chicago Bears special teams coordinator, as well as I believe the Saints. I think Darren Rizzi. They proposed it to the NFL. They're going to propose it at the owners' meetings March 24th and 27th. But wouldn't it be crazy? Moose shoots down the XFL kickoff because, as he publicly said, it's not traditional, doesn't look like real football. And all of a sudden, the team that he's a legend with, that he was a legend for in the Dallas Cowboys, their
Yeah.
special teams coordinator, um, is pushing for the XFL kickoff, and he's the one who's helping coach up two guys who are USFL All Stars into NFL All Pros. Crazy thing is, Mark, last spring, John Fossil, he practiced the XFL kickoff in practice with the Dallas Cowboys. So Cavante Turpin was returning XFL kickoffs,
Oh.
and Aubrey was kicking them. So he's already practicing with his players. Well, the purposes of that was to record the practices and then to show how it would work as he
Uh-huh.
pitches. And now I know there's going to be some tweaks. It's a version of the XFL kickoff, a little bit different from where they kick it off and how many returners are back there and where the touchback ends up. But that would be crazy. UFL moves forward, no XFL kickoff, and
And
the
then the
NFL has it.
NFL, I agree the same thing. The other thing too is with that argument is Cavante Turpin and Brandon Aubrey, if the XFL came first, they would have played in the XFL. You know what I'm
Yeah, and
saying?
here's
You
a
would have
crazy
flipped it.
well, Mark, that's great that you bring that up, especially on the Turpin thing. And yes, Aubrey would have played. Turpin did try out for the XFL. Unfortunately, what happened with him, and he ran very fast 40 time. That's to be expected. But he wasn't allowed into the league because of Vince McMahon's policy.
Oh,
At
yeah.
the time, Cavante Turpin had, I want to say, two different incidents with domestic violence with his girlfriend.
Oh.
And that's the reason Turpin was kicked out of TCU. He was an NFL talent from day one and would have been drafted, or a highly rated undrafted free agent would have been on an NFL team. But because he had the domestic violence assault cases against him,
Mm.
he was persona non grata. And he did work out for the XFL during their showcases. I mean, they had so many different players. Young Wei Koo, bunch of guys who worked out for the league.
Yeah.
But and obviously the guys who ended up in the league. But he did work out for the XFL, but his character came up as a red flag, so he was taken off teams' boards and not allowed to
Oh,
play in the league.
interesting.
And then he ends up playing European League of Football. He played in the Spring League, and then obviously in the USFL, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
He was always an NFL talent. Um, You know, and he got his opportunity and he ran with it. He did such a great job for the Generals.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm repping for the Guardians here, not
I
Orlando.
saw that.
So
I'm
thought
repping
I'd
both
rep for the
leagues.
Fallen. Yeah, so I'm I thought I'd rep for the Fallen, but maybe one day there'll be a New York team. The league doesn't feel right without one. Like
Yeah.
maybe because New York are born and raised. But anyway, but so that just makes it funny. Like, so Turpin could have been, he's already practicing XFL kickoffs and Cowboys practice, and he would have killed it if he was in the XFL doing the returns. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no doubt about it. He's killing it in the NFL, he's killing it in the USFL. So we'll see how that all goes. Even the CFL is looking at the XFL kickoff
I did.
as
I've
an
seen that too.
alternative.
Yeah.
And then so that would be wild if my general sense that I get is I think that they're going to just miss the cut and not implement the XFL kickoff into the NFL. I know they're going to call it something else. They're saying it's a version of the XFL kickoff. It's that kind of thing. It's reimagined or whatever, which
Hmm.
was a tag thing they used for
Yeah.
XFL in 2020. But I think the NFL, it's so radical and different from the traditional. They're gonna do something to that kickoff. It's just a question of when. You're never gonna see the NFL kickoff as it is. They're not gonna keep it as is because of injuries and lack of returns, all
Mm.
that. So they're definitely gonna make a change. It's just a question of whether they use this or a tweak version of this or something else comes along. So I think it's possible that we see the XFL, this version of the XFL kickoff in the NFL next season. And if it's not, perhaps in 2025. Um, but it's coming. I think there's no way around it.
Yeah.
They're no longer they what Fossil said in he watched Super Bowl. There was 13 kickoffs, 13 touchbacks. So it was like
Yeah.
so they got rid of injuries, somewhat, but they made sure there was no return. So if you have no returns, nobody could get hurt.
Yeah.
So they want the kickoff in the game. So I just think that's a fascinating like element to this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's gonna
Yeah.
be they're gonna be mainstream fans who check out the UFL's first week and go, "Hey, where's that kickoff everybody's talking about that the
Yeah.
NFL's gonna have?" Because the vote is coming. I think the owners' meetings are the 24th to 27th. Obviously, XFL season, excuse me, UFL season kicks
Yeah.
off on the 30th. So we're gonna find out whether that kickoff got approved before the UFL season kicks off on
Yeah.
Fox between
That's gonna be
10 and
interesting.
11.
So let's get into the UFL season now. So what do you think fans will expect from this UFL season in 2024? I mean, we've already talked about the play will be good. You're talking the best players emerged from 16 teams to 8. I mean, what other kind of things? I mean, just kind of what we've been, if you followed the XFL and the USFL, that kind of play, basically.
I think the major storyline, I think continuity is important because, you got teams like the Defenders bringing back Barlow and obviously Jordan Teamo at the helm. That stuff helps. They have some huge holes to fill with no Chris Blair and Lucky Jackson are in the NFL. But I think continuity is important. It's hard. I know there are some people on the XFL side that maybe look at the USFL side and say, well, that league wasn't as good as us. But it's hard not to respect what the Birmingham Stallions have done.
Hmm.
Zach Potter, I did a 4-part series at SI about the team and breaking down every aspect of it. And Zach Potter's done a tremendous job. He's only 23 years old. They've won 2 championships in a row. Skip Holtz has done a great job. John Chavis at defense, they're very aggressive. They've done a really good job. They've supplied the most NFL opportunities to players, so they're good at scouting. Team players want to play for them now. If they're considering the spring leagues, they look at the Stallions' success, Brandon Aubrey's and everybody else, and they go, "Let me try that team." So you got Matt Corral, who
Yeah.
signed on with the Stallions. I think Birmingham to me is the favorite. The odds makers have them that way. DraftKings, it's totally
Hmm.
understandable. Whether or not they can win a third straight championship in a row remains to be seen. St. Louis, DC, you expect those, 2 teams to be really good. They were really good last year. DC was 9-1. St. Louis was 7-3. Both have very good rosters, and they got stronger through the dispersal draft. That you had St. Louis adding Peter Tamoa Penu
Yeah.
as pass rusher there. They've got Austin Falu. So they've added good players like Jacor Pearson's injury notwithstanding. The Battlehawks got A.J. McCarron back, who was so phenomenal last season.
Yeah.
Anthony Beck did a great job with that team. So they're going to be good. DC is going to be really good because of the continuity. Then it's a question of these other teams. Like as I'm going through the list, I think those are the top three teams: the Stallions, the Defenders, Battlehawks, however you want to put that, rank it at. And then it's a matter, the Showboats look extremely impressive on paper. They're like a merged New Orleans Breakers Memphis team, and they added Case Cookus. They got
Mm.
Darius Victor. They got a lot of talent, Vontae Diggs. So they took some of the best elements of the Breakers and put them with the Showboats, and they got a little bit of the stars there with Cookus. They did a really good job, especially the early part of the draft. They look really good on paper. They could challenge the Stallions in the USFL conference. But then, as I'm saying all this, I'm disrespecting the league champions of the XFL, the Arlington Renegades and Bob Stoops. So, they obviously they finished 4-6. Then, if you want to technically, they won their last two games, so they went finished 6-6. And a big reason for that was Luis Perez. They got him back in the fold. Arlington's gonna have a chip on their shoulders because everybody's gonna doubt them this season. Um, so they're going to be interesting. Like the Houston Roughnecks. That's such a weird,
Yeah.
one of the unique aspects of the UFL this year. How it's the Gamblers are now the Roughnecks. So with Gamblers players, Mark Thompson's a heck of a running back. So they could surprise some people. San Antonio, Michigan. They're going to be teams that people are going to overlook. The key is always this quarterback play. They got big changes in San Antonio with A.G. Smith as the offensive coordinator there, Wade Phillips. These teams are all going to be fascinating. Somebody's got to lose these games, so not everybody's
Yeah.
going to have a winning record in the playoffs. So, I think the top four teams in the league are Memphis, St. Louis, DC, and Birmingham, and the Stallions, until proven otherwise, are the favorite to win it all. And, if they don't, there's going to be a
Mm.
lot of people rooting against them. So,
Yeah.
on the USFL side and on the XFL side. So, um, but I think that's the way it shakes out. I think the quality of play is going to be good because of the continuity. Even though they don't have a very long training camp, it's important that you're bringing back a lot of players that have already played in the systems, the offense. So there's a crispness there. There's some key players though that some of these teams have lost that it's going to be hard to replace. And you see the Defenders are having trouble right now trying to figure out who they're going to keep at wide receiver.
Mm.
Replacing Lucky Jackson, Chris Blair is not going to be easy for them, but they do have Abram Smith back and Fred Keiss running the offense with Jordan Teamu. So there's a lot of fun football aspects to this league. If you've been following along the last couple of years, both leagues, like I have, yeah, it's like an evolution to this point.
Yeah. So are there any players that we don't know of that could, maybe that are new to spring football that really, or maybe are on a different team that might surprise some people for their fantasy drafts coming up?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, well, Wayne Gallman stands out. He has name recognition. It doesn't mean just because you have an NFL background that you're going to automatically make a team and be a star. We just saw that the Defenders released Preston Williams, who everybody assumed was going to be wide receiver one.
Mm.
But Wayne Gallman in the Battlehawks team, I think is somebody to look. If he gets the rock there and gets a chance to carry it, I think he can be one of the best running backs in the league. Challenge Abram Smith and Mark Thompson with Houston. Kiki Cutie.
Mm.
It's kind of an interesting name that the Defenders picked up. I don't know. Hopefully, he's picked up the offense. Josh Hammond retired. That's another name the Defenders lost a receiver. They need somebody to throw the ball to. Um, we'll see if he makes it in camp, but he's an interesting guy. I thought whenever he got an opportunity in the NFL, he shined, and he had a lot of injuries. He's smaller, but he's an explosive player in the slot. He had a Puka Nakua like debut in the NFL. His first ever game in the NFL, played for the Houston Texans. He set the all-time record for most catches and yards by a wide receiver in his first ever game as a rookie. And and then, injuries and everything kind of curtailed his career. And so I think he's somebody that if you're looking fantasy wise, it's hard. You look at the connections, right? So when you see Quentin Dormady and Cody Latimer together on the same team, you got to figure that he's going to, Dormady's going to pepper him with targets. So I would definitely target, especially Latimer. You got to figure
Mm.
It's strange because in that AJ Smith system, they don't tend to utilize tight ends, but Cody
That's
Latimer is going to
true.
be used all over the floor. But Latimer is going to be used all over the formation, so I see him as a favored target in fantasy drafts. You have to figure he's going to get 5 to 10 targets each game. He's going to be targeted in the red zone. He'll be moved all over the formation. They got to get him the ball. John Trey Kirkland is somebody, if he's healthy and fully ready to go, there haven't been much talk about him, but he's
Hmm.
back with AJ Smith in that offense. He was the most explosive player in the league in the XFL until he got hurt midseason.
Yeah.
He was a lot of fun to watch. So he's somebody who out there who I think can stand up. So those are some of the players there that that I believe are going to be standouts for the league. The quarterbacks we know, AJ McCarron. It's interesting the Birmingham aspect too, like who emerges. They lost two very good receivers, like the defenders to the NFL, and Austin Watkins, who's now with the Eagles, and Davion Davis, who was a big star for Birmingham down the stretch there. They
Yeah.
lost Alex Magoo at quarterback. So who emerges at quarterback? If it's Jamar Smith, um, and then, they got some interesting receivers there. Deion Kane started to emerge late last year. He's somebody I'd look for in fantasy. Amari Rogers, who they picked up, a recent third-round pick in the NFL. I think he could be somebody who steps in. Victor Bolden is back.
Mm.
I would say draft Victor Bolden in fantasy. Um, he was the yards leader in 2022 in the USFL, and then he was obviously the championship game MVP. They're going to
Yep.
utilize him all over the place. So I think he's somebody you want to roster and put him in your flex, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of fascinating talent out there that I think it could be huge contributors during the UFL season.
Yeah. Why did St. Louis, speaking of players, pick up Brandon Silvers? I was surprised that he wouldn't be on a different team, but I was like, oh, I guess AJ McCarron's not coming. And then AJ McCarron signed. So that kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, AJ McCarron and Brandon Silvers, and I'm sure Pat Ruffino could speak on this because he has connections to the Battlehawks too. They're very close. They both have Alabama connections. They work out together,
Oh,
and so I don't want to say AJ got him that job, but
maybe.
pretty much. And I think it's interesting to me, like the Brahma situation at quarterback is interesting to me because I know that the league itself has reached out to Kellen Mond and Trace McSorley, but they turned down the league to come and play. I think it's a mistake on their part, but they're waiting for NFL opportunities. Both those guys ended up throwing at the combine. Kellen Mond would have been interesting in San Antonio with the Brahmas. He's a San Antonio native, played at Texas A&M. But I think it was interesting that San Antonio with AJ Smith decided not to bring back Brandon Silvers,
Yeah.
who played well for Houston, then got hurt, and then his kind of play slid after he got hurt. I think it was like a direct correlation there.
Mm.
But I found it fascinating that the Brahmas, with AJ Smith, with that roughneck staff from last year, decided to go in a different direction at quarterback, and they went the Quentin Dormady route. They got Garbers, former Raider, and then Joe Flacco's brother there, Tom.
Yeah.
So we'll see if the Brahmas add a quarterback before the season starts or as the season progresses. But Silver's not being with AJ in San Antonio is interesting to me. I don't know what to read of that. I haven't gotten any definitive word from the Brahma side that they don't like Brandon, but sometimes the actions speak louder than words. But I think Silvers is in St. Louis because they're looking for two things. They're looking for a guy who has starting experience in the league to back up AJ.
Hmm.
And I think his friendship with AJ McCarron helped him get there. Those two want to be together. Brandon doesn't have a starting job waiting for him with any of the other teams.
Yeah.
So
So might as well.
if you're gonna be a backup in the league, that's a good spot to be a backup. Gronkowski's offense with your buddy AJ, and they got good weapons in St. Louis.
Gotcha. And so and you had mentioned that, you thought 2 years is kind of like the runway for this league, if not to improve. I mean, something that I gathered from just chit-chatting with people was, the emphasis on ticket sales. Ticket sales generate sponsors, and then it looks good on television, but then also create sponsors. It's kind of being that thing. Have you heard like any kind of long-term goals or goals that the league wants to hit this season as far as numbers? Because we know, I mean, that's really the bottom line is like whatever target they want to hit so that they can go on to a year two. Have you heard any of those kind of things?
No, I think their expectations are modest. I think some NFL fans will look at the attendance figures of spring league games and kind of make jokes or ridicule the
Mm,
numbers that you see. But I think their expectations are modest. Like honestly, Michigan Panthers, the Memphis Showboats, the Birmingham Stallions, they were lucky if they got 10,000 fans who actually paid tickets to come see their games. Lucky if that
mm,
was the case. Birmingham was a little bit more luckier than the other two on that one. So even though we sat there and we go, oh man, Orlando did not have great attendance in Camping World, the fact that they averaged close to whatever it was 9,000 was not bad, all things considered. And they weren't a great team. Obviously, they only won one game. They got better towards the end of the season. We saw the Vegas Vipers only average 6,000 fans.
mm.
Um, and obviously they didn't have a very good team. That was a weird situation. They sold tickets very late, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. But the USFL side would kill for 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 paid fans at their games. They didn't get that in Canton. They didn't get that in
Mm.
Michigan. They barely once maybe got in Memphis. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe one of those days they give away free spatulas. But I think they're modest expectations for attendance. But the thing is with all this, Mark, is like all this works hand in hand. You need to, like, for example, the Panthers are struggling right now to sell tickets. They were late to the game to sell tickets, and they're late to the game with single game tickets. And then you wonder why you're not doing so great. Now, as they get closer to the season, maybe they'll pick up. Um, but if you see numbers like 10,000, 11,000, I wouldn't consider those disappointing. Could they do better than that? Yes. But I wouldn't consider those to be disappointing. These leagues are still trying to prove themselves, and these are markets where there hasn't been a lot of success in selling tickets. Now, could the league do a better job of promoting? Yes. It all works hand in hand. Like what you have to do is you have to reach out to media members. How you sell tickets in a particular market is you have media members involved. So I'm going to get in trouble with this, but I always get in trouble with these leagues. The league is sending out Zoom media sessions with their coaches. The St. Louis, to be expected, had so many media members in their Zoom last week. Pat Ruffino was in there, a bunch of guys. Mexico was represented. So there was a lot of media members that were part of it. You can tell there's interest in St. Louis. The Houston Roughnecks, I almost said Gamblers, they had only one media member in their Zoom. Now I know it's a unique time of day, last second notice, but I think that's an example of the level of interest that markets have, because what you need is you need to connect to media members, you need to do outreach and connect to media members, and you need to you know have them be a part of your Zooms, give them availability, give them information, be transparent, because what they end up doing is they end up promoting your league for you.
Mhm.
So if you see there's only one media member, I mean, the Roughnecks deal with CJ Johnson, one media member in there, they asked about Reuben Foster. It was like a 5-minute Zoom. See you later.
Mm.
The Battlehawks thing, you got Rufino asking about backup players and Johnny Buchanan and a whole bunch of other stuff. And Mexican reporters are asking questions, and everybody from all over the country is asking St. Louis questions beyond just St. Louis. And then, and you can see the Stallions had a good turnout for their media session. There was some interest there. So you can see there's interest there, but, nothing compared to St. Louis. And like I said, that's, to me, is a direct correlation of how much interest there is in a team in your
Mm.
market. If you're
Yeah.
having a media session, only one person is interested. And, of course, it's the generic, let me look at the roster, see who I recognize. Oh, Reuben Foster.
Yeah.
And ask a question about him and then get out. Don't even ask about who's the quarterbacks are, Jared Guarantano or whatever. Don't ask about the receivers, Isaiah Henney or whatever. Well, who's going to be starting, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
scrimmages, all that. So, just look at the Reuben Foster, ask him about that, and be on your way. So I think that the league can do a better job of connecting with the media members that do cover the league, but also outreach, like reaching out. Stephanie Rudnick did such a tremendous job years ago for the XFL. Her Rolodex, if people even use that anymore, is impressive. How many people she reached out to. You got to humble yourself a little bit and you got to do the legwork. You can't be lazy with this. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think they could do better. We know St. Louis is going to do well. We know DC is going to do well. I think they can do better in the other markets. You would hope Arlington would have a nice turnout for their home opener against Birmingham. That game has a lot of juice. We'll see what the weather's like too,
True.
but you never know. So it could be rain, could be anything. But you want crowds that are invested. Whoever shows up, you want crowds that are invested into the league, into the teams, into the games. I think you'll get some of that. How many fans you get, I don't know. If I was going over under on a lot of these games, you wouldn't see me going past. If it's not St. Louis related, you wouldn't see me going past like 15, 16K for a lot of these games.
Gotcha. Interesting. All right. So to wrap this up, Mr. Mike Mitchell, we will get your take. Who is the four playoff teams? Who's in the championship game and who's winning it all? Right here.
I'm gonna give a boring answer. I'm gonna say the Stallions over the Battlehawks in St. Louis, which that hasn't been officially announced yet by the league, but is the assumption by everyone
Yeah.
that the championship game is gonna be in St. Louis. There's pressure. If the Battlehawks make it to the championship game and they're playing in the dome, there's gonna be it's gonna be packed. They might sell it out, but there's gonna be pressure on them to actually win the damn thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say Stallions over the Battlehawks in their on their own field to
Ooh,
win a third straight championship.
there you heard.
I like the Defenders to make the playoffs, and I like their coaching staff a lot. Reggie Barlow, Greg Williams, Fred Keiss. I think they got their quarterback back. We'll see what happens with a receiver. Their defense is really stacked. They loaded up on their front seven and their secondary. I think DC is a threat to win it all again. They got to
Hmm.
the championship last year. And my sleeper team, although I don't think they're that big of a sleeper, is Memphis.
Mm.
So I think the showboats with Case Cookus is one of the best quarterbacks in this space. If they can protect him in Memphis, which the Stars did not do last year, um, he can have a monster year. He can knock off Birmingham. If Birmingham doesn't get the quarterback play that they got last year from when Alex Magoo was with the Packers, I
Mm.
think Memphis can win the USFL conference. So they're definitely in there. I know I excluded teams in this so they can make my take age extremely poorly. But those are the four teams who I think that'll make the playoffs, and that would be a fun championship game if the championship game's in St. Louis and the Battlehawks are actually playing there. That might be the largest attendance we've seen in this modern era for any game. So that could be a great one. So hopefully we get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, all four of those teams would be great markets. I mean, Memphis, with their market, that would be great to have a lot of people there. So yeah, would there be one other team that might, now that we have this playoffs where you could have
Sure.
three teams from one division, is there another team that you think might kind of squeak in if it wasn't, say, Memphis or DC?
That's a tough one. Like, if I had to pick between Arlington, Michigan, I don't know that Arlington has enough weapons at wide receiver. That worries me a little bit. They got away with it. Obviously, Luis Perez did such a phenomenal job last year. Spring King. Uh Michigan,
Would it
E.G.
be San
Perry was really
Antonio?
good. San Antonio's interesting to me, but I still have question marks. I think Quentin Dormady was very good towards the end of the year last year. His numbers are very good. He surprised everybody. I love the fact that he was able to redeem himself after that bogus story came out about him giving away plays and this, that,
Mm-hmm.
and the other. He had a jealous teammate who's still in the league, by the way, who kind of trying to make him look bad. Um, I don't know about San Antonio's quarterback situation. The Roughnecks are going to have very good offense. I think their receivers are very good, but again, question marks at quarterback. I happen to like Reed Sinet.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to pick I have to roll with Arlington as this. I know they're a champion, so I know it's
Right.
hard to say they're a sleeper, but I really like their coaching staff. I like Stoops. I like their core. To me, it comes down to head coach, quarterback. Um, they made a little bit of a change in offensive coordinator with Long, who's now their offensive coordinator. Jonathan Hayes not there anymore. Jay Hayes' brother is still with the defense. I like the continuity there in that coaching staff, and they have a really good quarterback. So I think Arlington could once again surprise everybody. And it's kind of like because they're going to have a massive chip on their shoulder because they're going to be overlooked by everybody. Um, so despite winning a championship last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Arlington. Houston fascinates me because I like their receivers, the Roughnecks. Um, their coach is really good at coaching up receivers. San Antonio, the quarterback position. If Quentin Dormady, they have some weapons to play with there in San Antonio. If Quentin Dormady can live up to what he was last year, and how he started to play at the end of the year, and he can
Mm-hmm.
fit in that offense. We don't know. I don't know about these quarterbacks in that air raid / run and shoot of AJ's. Um,
Yeah.
like San Antonio strikes me as a team that's if things don't work out in the first few weeks of the season at the quarterback position, they could very well be calling the other teams for their backups trying to make trades like for a Cole Kelly or somebody like that, just trying to like improve things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll say Arlington only because if we're gonna go sleeper out of those, I picked my four playoff teams, but I'll say Arlington because I think they're gonna have a chip on their shoulder and I really like their coaching staff.
All right, there you have it. Mike Mitchell from Sports Illustrated. We'll check in mid-season and kind of see how things are going at that point. So I appreciate you being on the show.
Appreciate you, Mark. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right.